Started innocently like most things do. I was 22, fresh out of a suffocating breakup, and desperate to reinvent myself. When a coworker, Rachel, invited me to her exclusive club, I was too intrigued and too naive to ask questions. "It's a swing party," she had said nonchalantly, like she was inviting me to a casual brunch. I didn't know what that meant, not really, but her sly smile and the way she emphasized the word swing made my curiosity burn. That Friday, I stepped into a dimly lit mansion with walls that seemed to pulse with muted bass. The air was a cocktail of expensive perfume, cologne, and faint anticipation. The initial fear melted when I realized it wasn't the chaotic, leather-clad hedonism I'd imagined. People sipped wine, lounged on velvet sofas, and exchanged casual conversation. It was normal, or so it seemed. I spent months attending these gatherings, learning the unspoken rules. A subtle glance could say everything. A soft touch was a whispered invitation. Some nights were electrifying, exhilarating. The intrigue, the mystery, the forbidden edge. It was intoxicating. And oh, the stories I could tell. Like the time I joined a group of strangers in a champagne toast that spiraled into a high-stakes poker game where clothes became currency. Or when a charming couple from Paris taught me to dance barefoot under moonlight. These memories feel like technicolor dreams now, sharp and surreal. But then there were the other nights. The swing party I stumbled upon last autumn. That was something else. My friend Mia, always brash and impulsive, begged me to join her. "It's going to be a wild one," she promised. "Trust me." Those words should have been my cue to run. Instead, I put on my best dress, did my makeup with an extra flick of eyeliner, and walked into what would become the most bizarre experience of my life. The house was old, creaking under the weight of decades. The crowd inside, a different vintage altogether. Men, every single one of them, were well past 60, dressed in suits that smelled like mothballs and nostalgia. Their enthusiasm was unsettling. It didn't take long to realize Mia and I were the only women under 50. "What is this place?" I whispered as one of the men handed Mia a glass of wine. He winked at me, his dentures slightly misaligned. "No." "Relax," Mia giggled, already charmed by the attention. But I couldn't. The way they looked at us wasn't flattering, it was hungry. The night spiraled into a blur of uncomfortable moments. One insisted on telling me about his World War II memorabilia collection before asking if I'd like to see his medals upstairs. Another tried to serenade me with Sinatra, his hand too low on my waist as we swayed. Then there was the man with a silver-topped cane who offered Mia and Meave special milk from his farm. "Fresh from the source," he smirked. I wanted to gag. By the time someone started a bizarre chant, something about youth and wisdom, I grabbed Mia's arm and bolted. Outside, the cold air hit us like a slap. "Never again," I muttered as we huddled in the car, the faint taste of sour wine lingering in my throat. Mia, to her credit, was speechless. 2 weeks after my first swing party, I felt like I'd unlocked a secret club, one that came with champagne, stolen glances, and a thrill I couldn't quite name. Rachel, my unofficial guide to this new world, was brimming with ideas. She texted me non-stop about upcoming events, promising bigger crowds, better vibes, and even a few themed nights. I was skeptical but intrigued. "You have to come to this one," she said during one of her enthusiastic calls. "It's at this gorgeous mansion, super exclusive, and everyone's talking about it. Think candlelight, live music, the works." "Candlelight?" I raised an eyebrow, already imagining wax dripping onto my dress. "Are they hosting a séance or something?" Rachel laughed. "Trust me. It's classy. No séance. Just magic." When I arrived at the mansion, it lived up to Rachel's hype. The driveway was lined with cars that probably cost more than my entire education, and the house itself glowed in the soft light of lanterns strung across the garden. The faint sound of jazz spilled out as I walked inside, immediately hit with the scent of expensive cologne and the clink of glasses. I spotted Rachel near the bar, dazzling in a red dress that practically screamed, "Look at me." She waved me over, her excitement infectious. "You made it." "Barely," I said, grabbing a flute of champagne from a passing waiter. "So, where's the magic?" "Everywhere," she replied with a grin, nodding toward the room. The crowd was as Rachel promised. Stylish, confident, and impossibly good-looking. Couples mingled effortlessly, their conversations punctuated by flirtatious laughter. A man across the room caught my eye, a smoldering gaze and a sharp suit that fit him like a second skin. I quickly averted my gaze, pretending to focus on the delicate bubbles rising in my glass. As the night progressed, I began to notice something off. The room felt different from my first party, less like a gathering of curious, open-minded people and more like a silent competition. The glances were sharper, the smiles more calculated. At one point, I overheard a group of women whispering about an upcoming special event later that evening. Their voices were low, their tone conspiratorial, and it sent a faint chill down my spine. Rachel seemed oblivious. She floated through the room like a butterfly, chatting with anyone who crossed her path. When I pulled her aside to ask what was going on, she just shrugged. "You're overthinking it," she said. "Relax. Have fun." But relaxing wasn't in the cards. I wandered into one of the quieter rooms, hoping for a breather. Instead, I found a group gathered around a man holding court with a story that made my skin crawl. He spoke with too much detail about a party he'd attended where the theme had been surrender. "It's all in good fun," he said, his smile too wide. "But you have to be open to unconventional experiences, like drinking goat milk." I muttered under my breath, remembering Rachel's earlier pitch about themed nights. He caught my eye and raised an eyebrow. "Something like that," he said with a wink. I didn't need any more convincing that this wasn't my scene. When Rachel finally found me again, I was hovering near the exit, pretending to scroll through my phone. "Are you seriously thinking about leaving?" she asked, her hands on her hips. "Something about this feels weird," I said. "Don't you think it's a little too much? Like, who are these people?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. It's just a party." But as I stepped outside into the cool night air, a sense of relief washed over me. The further I got from the glowing mansion and its unsettling crowd, the lighter I felt. I told myself I was just imagining things, that the pressure of this new world was making me paranoid. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time I'd find myself wondering if I'd made a mistake. After the odd vibes of the mansion party, I told myself I needed a break from swing parties. Long break, maybe even permanent. But Rachel wasn't about to let me off the hook. "Come on," she pleaded over coffee one morning. "The next one is going to be incredible. Super exclusive. And you already know half the crowd." "Define exclusive," I said, narrowing my eyes. Rachel grinned. "Invitation only. No surprises this time, I promise. It's going to be the best yet." I sighed, hesitating. Part of me wanted to say no, to stick to my promise of staying away. But the other part, curious, restless, couldn't resist the pull of one last adventure. The party was held in a sleek, modern penthouse overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering skyline, and the space was filled with soft, ambient lighting. Felt safe. Or at least safer than the mansion had been. Rachel, of course, was in her element, flitting from one conversation to the next. I stuck close to the bar, nursing a glass of wine and scanning the room. The crowd was smaller this time, and while the energy was lively, there was a subtle tension beneath the surface, an unspoken anticipation that made my skin prickle. That's when I noticed him. A man standing by the window, his silhouette outlined by the city lights. He was tall, with an easy confidence that made him stand out. His gaze met mine, and he smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I looked away quickly, pretending to be fascinated by the contents of my glass. But moments later he was beside me. "First time here?" he asked, his voice low and smooth. "Not exactly," I replied, glancing up at him. Up close, he was even more magnetic, dark eyes, sharp jawline, and a presence that made the room feel smaller. "I'm Adrian," he said, offering his hand. I hesitated, then shook it. "Lila." As the evening progressed, Adrian stayed close. We talked about everything and nothing: travel, music, books. His questions pulling me in. His laughter wrapping around me like a warm embrace. It was intoxicating, but there was something about him I couldn't quite place. Something just slightly off. At one point, Rachel passed by, raising an eyebrow when she saw us. "Making friends already?" she teased, her tone light but her eyes curious. Adrian chuckled. "Just getting to know the best person in the room." Rachel smirked, but I caught the faintest flicker of unease in her expression before she disappeared back into the crowd. Later that night, things took a strange turn. The host, a charismatic man in his 50s, clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth and commanding. "Tonight we have something special planned." A murmur ran through the crowd as he gestured toward a set of doors at the far end of the room. "For those of you interested in a little adventure, the doors are open." Adrian leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "What do you think?" I hesitated, my heart pounding. "I think I've had enough adventure for one night." He laughed softly. "Smart choice." As a few people moved toward the doors, I couldn't help but notice Rachel among them, her excitement palpable. She caught my eye and waved, mouthing, "You're missing out." I wasn't so sure. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and laughter, but the strange tension never fully left. When I finally decided to call it a night, Adrian walked me to the elevator. "Will I see you again?" he asked as the doors opened. I hesitated, the weight of the evening pressing down on me. "Maybe," I said finally. His smile was faint, enigmatic. "Take care, Lila." As the elevator descended, I felt a mix of relief and unease. Something about the night didn't sit right, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Driving home, my thoughts drifted to Rachel. What had been behind those doors? What kind of adventure had she found? A chill ran through me as I remembered the mansion party, the goat milk, the unsettling smiles. For the first time, I wondered if Rachel's idea of fun and mine were more different than I'd realized. I told myself I was done with swing parties, that this would be my last one. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. If I had known what that night would bring, I would have stayed home. Scratch that. I would have locked my doors, unplugged my phone, and barricaded myself under a mountain of blankets. But as they say, hindsight is 20/20, and I was too distracted by Mia's enthusiasm to sense the impending doom. "It's going to be different this time," she insisted, leaning over my couch with an almost predatory glint in her eye. "It's at this exclusive spot. Small crowd. Super discreet. You'll love it." I shot her a look, the memory of the grandpa convention still fresh. Defined small crowd. 15 tops. "Trust me, the vibe will be immaculate." She grinned, the kind of grin that made you suspicious. But against my better judgment, and probably my dignity, I let her talk me into it. The party was held at a sprawling estate on the outskirts of town, a place so secluded it might as well have been on another planet. The driveway was lined with cars that screamed wealth. Sleek black sedans, shiny SUVs, and even a few sports cars. It looked promising, at least from the outside. When we stepped inside, however, I immediately felt the shift. The crowd wasn't the sexy, diverse mix I'd come to expect. Instead, it was gray. And no, I don't mean the decor. Every man in the room was easily 60 or older, their faces lined with experience, and perhaps a little too much Botox in some cases. The smell of cologne and mothballs hit me like a wall. "Mia," I hissed, grabbing her arm. "What the hell is this?" She looked around, clearly surprised. "Maybe they just started early," she whispered, though even she sounded unconvinced. Her eyes darted nervously toward a cluster of men in tailored suits, who were already staring at us like we were the main course. "This isn't a swing party," I muttered. "It's a retirement party." We tried to make the best of it at first, sipping wine and chatting with a few women in attendance, most of whom looked like they'd been dragged there by their enthusiastic husbands. But then the real strangeness began. One of the men approached us, a tall, thin figure with a cane topped by a silver hawk. His smile was toothy, his dentures gleaming under the chandelier light. "Ladies," he began, his voice smooth but carrying a slight wheeze. "Would you care for a dance?" "I'm fine, thanks," I replied, trying to step away. But Mia, bless her overconfident heart, decided to play along. "Oh, we're just here for the fun," she said, flashing her most dazzling smile. "What's the theme tonight?" His grin widened. "Ah, you're new. Tonight we're celebrating the art of youth and vitality. It's our annual tradition. Youth and vitality." I glanced around the room at the sea of sagging tuxedos and thinning hairlines. The irony was almost too much to bear. Things spiraled downhill when the special drinks were served. A butler wheeled out a silver cart laden with what looked like milk bottles, their contents frothy and unappealing. "It's an old family recipe," one of the men explained, thrusting a glass into my hand. "Straight from the farm." I sniffed it cautiously, the scent a stomach-turning blend of sourness and desperation. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Goat's milk," the man exclaimed proudly. "Strengthens the bones, invigorates the spirit. Drink up." Mia took a tentative sip, her face instantly contorting. "It's tangy," she managed, though she quickly set the glass down. I wasn't brave enough to try it. The thought of drinking anything that had come from an animal, or a fridge older than me, was enough to make my stomach churn. But the men insisted, crowding closer, their excitement palpable. By the time the dancing started, I was done. One older gentleman, apparently emboldened by his goat milk cocktail, attempted a tango with me, his hand creeping dangerously low on my back. Another serenaded Mia with a warbly rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon" that made me want to crawl under a table and hide. The final straw came when someone suggested a group activity involving blindfolds and scented oils. "Nope," I said, grabbing Mia's arm. "We're leaving." "But now, Mia." We barely made it to the car before bursting into laughter. Panicked, gasping laughter that bordered on hysteria. "What was that?" Mia wheezed, tears streaming down her face. "That," I said, wiping my eyes, "was the last swing party I will ever go to." The sour taste of the night lingered, literally. Even weeks later, I could still smell the faint tang of goat's milk in my nightmares. Every time I thought about it, my stomach turned. I couldn't look at an old man in a suit without hearing Sinatra or feel the urge to bolt from the nearest exit. And so, my swing party days came to an end. Maybe it wasn't the grand adventure I'd envisioned, but it was a lesson, one I won't soon forget. Looking back now, I can laugh about it, well, most of it. The tang of goat's milk, the art of youth chant, the men's overly enthusiastic attempts at dancing. It all feels like a fever dream I can't believe I actually lived through. But every bizarre moment taught me something, even if it was just to check the guest list before RSVPing. The swing party scene wasn't what I'd expected when I first stumbled into it. Sure, it was thrilling, exciting, and full of surprises. But like anything that promises freedom and indulgence, it comes with its quirks. And, apparently, a heavy dose of sour milk. Here's what I've learned. Not all parties are created equal. What looks exclusive and glamorous on the surface might hide a reality you're not ready for. Trust your gut. And maybe skip anything advertised as vitality-themed. Curiosity is great, until it isn't. Trying new things is part of life, but there's a fine line between curiosity and being too trusting. Learn where yours lies, and don't let it take you to a place you'll regret. You can always leave. The most empowering lesson. You don't have to stay anywhere that doesn't feel right. Whether it's a party or a relationship, knowing when to walk away is a skill worth mastering. Most importantly, this whole chapter of my life has reminded me not to take myself too seriously. If we can't laugh at our missteps, what's the point? Sure, I might have sworn off swing parties forever, but the stories I've collected are worth every awkward tango and questionable drink. So, to anyone listening, this story was created for entertainment, But the humor comes from real lessons learned in ridiculous situations. Take it as a reminder to explore life, make mistakes, and most importantly, know when to bow out gracefully. And if you ever find yourself surrounded by men offering you fresh milk at a swing party, run. Trust me,